Hello and welcome back to Juno's Musings. I'm Juno, intimacy provider and educator, here to share some of my musings with you about my time working in this industry. My hope is to shed a little bit of light on doing this work for those of you who are new to the industry and those of you who are curious about joining. Today, I would like to talk about why the industry or the sale of intimacy is so taboo in our culture. I recently did a video on internalized stigma as intimacy providers. If you haven't watched that, maybe go check it out. That episode talked about how intimacy providers ourselves can feel a lot of stigma and with this internalized stigma. So these stereotypes and negative messages that are out in the world about intimacy providers and how we are either bad people or doing bad things, and how we can bring that into our self-identity and really feel this stigma towards ourselves. In that episode, I touched a little bit on how, because this is societal messages saying that what we are doing is wrong and that therefore makes us wrong, and we internalize that, this is all derived from these taboos that we are being told and that everybody is being told, and makes the industry of intimacy providing or the selling of intimate services a very taboo topic, a taboo underground world. And so I would like to dig into that a little bit deeper today. So to kick us off, I think one factor that makes intimacy providing a taboo topic is criminalization by the legal system. So in Canada, selling intimate services is kind of a gray area. Check out my episode, Should Selling Intimate Services Be Legal?, if you want more in-depth information about this. So the laws we follow here, it's called the Nordic model. So it was originally from the Nordic region of the world, but Canada follows this model where service providers are allowed to sell our services. It's not illegal. Ooh, so progressive, Canada. But people who are purchasing services are committing a federal level crime. And anybody who wants to help us in our job, whether that is doing administrative work like screening and booking clients for us, being safety nets for us, so security or drivers who wait outside of bookings to make sure that we are okay, or people who rent spaces for us to work out of, people who help us with our advertisements, people who run agencies, any of that third-party work and clients themselves, that is all illegal. So essentially, yes, we're allowed to do the job, but everything we need to do to make it happen, particularly to make it happen safely, is not allowed. Obviously, if clients are being criminalized for purchasing our services, they're going to be concerned about their identity being leaked. So for me trying to screen clients, it's less likely that they want to send their ID or their LinkedIn or however you do your screening, because they're committing a federal level crime. So they don't want to be identified. I mean, that said, from my experience, especially privileged intimacy providers, I was going to say the not YouTube safe word, but intimacy providers, I don't personally know people who are being reprimanded by the laws. And so I do have, everybody that all the clients I see do go through screening in order to book with me. So it's not like people aren't doing it, but I understand from the client's perspective that it's risky. If you're committing a crime by seeing me, yeah, that's going to be a little nerve-wracking to give your identity to a stranger who you haven't met yet. So this whole progressive Nordic model really doesn't make it much safer for us. And so by having these laws that are saying intimacy provision is regulated by the Criminal Code of Canada, or if you're in a different country, a lot of countries, I mean, in the United States, it's just fully illegal. There are some countries like New Zealand and Germany and Amsterdam and parts of Australia that are a lot more liberal with intimacy provision, but a lot of countries in the world, the laws around this make it so that we are seen as a crime. We're not seen as a job. We're not workers. We are essentially like drug dealers. And that creates this stigma, this taboo of what we are doing is not work. It is something to be regulated by the criminal justice system. So I would say that's a pretty big reason that the average person in our society, when they think about intimacy providers, they think, oh, that's aligned with crime, and therefore that's taboo. I would say that the second thing that makes intimacy provision, intimacy provider work taboo in our culture are moral and maybe particularly religious beliefs. So everybody believes different things, and that can be based on your religion or just your personal morals that you've derived from your life experiences. And some of these beliefs are around intimacy or sex should not be done outside of marriage, or at least outside of a relationship, and at least not for financial gains from one person. So there are many people who see the work that I do and that many other people do as morally unjust. And because of that, then the whole intimacy provision industry, the role of being an intimacy provider is seen as a unjust, taboo experience. The third thing that I think makes our industry very taboo is pop culture messaging. So the last one was about morals, and I think that pop culture can play into our morals. So morals, maybe particularly in the last point, were derived from religious beliefs. But I think that for people who aren't religious, or people who are religious too, you're still forming your ideas within your religion. And so pop culture or mainstream media, that is a really big way that we receive messages about what is right and wrong. A lot of these are implicit. We're not consciously thinking, oh, the news told me that XYZ is good and LMNOP is bad. But by hearing messages and just the ways that people are talking about subjects in discourse, including intimacy providers, makes us believe certain things. It shapes the way that we think about things, and that can influence our beliefs. I think I just spat at the camera. I'm not going to go back. Just ignore that. So things like the news or TV and movies and messages on social media, they tend to portray intimacy providers in very dichotomous ways on this really like divided, either you are a helpless victim who is subjected to this world because you have no other choice, so you're selling your body, or you're this villainous seductress who's just going around seducing men and making them do things that they shouldn't do because you're so evil in your sexiness. There's just really not a very nuanced depiction of who we really are. Maybe there are, I wouldn't say there are victims really in intimacy providing world, I maybe could make a different, longer chat about this, but to me, human trafficking or sex trafficking is not intimacy providing. Intimacy providers are working by choice and consenting to doing this work, whereas human trafficking or sex trafficking are victims being trapped and sold. And so to me, I don't ever really like the word victim that much, but those people are, yeah, they're in a really friggin' shitty situation. Whereas intimacy providers, we come into this work for all sorts of reasons. Some people love it more than others. Some it's really is about survival, but it is our choice to be doing this. No one's forcing us to do it. We are choosing to do this work, and therefore we are not victims. And sure, we seduce people a little bit, like, yeah, that's part of the industry, but I don't think it's in a malicious way. We're just doing our job, and if you want what you see, then you got it. So this pop culture depiction of intimacy providers being these really duality experiences creates this taboo depiction of either helpless poor us or we're these evil people. Neither are good, and therefore we are taboo. Another reason I think that being an intimacy provider is seen as really taboo is number 4, fear of women's sexuality. This is going to tie into number 5 kind of, but I just wanted to ease into it for some of my viewers. I think women's sexuality is particularly taboo. You know, men can have a kill count, body count, whatever, how many people they've slept with can be a very high number. And a lot of people see that as, you know, sexual prowess and like, oh, you're the man, you can get all the ladies, ooh. Whereas when women and gender diverse folks have a high body count, it's more seen as dirty and, you know, you're not pure anymore. You're damaged goods. And so portraying and experiencing our sexuality is seen as a taboo thing. Plus, money is a pretty taboo topic in our culture. So, you know, you don't go around like meeting someone, hey, I'm Juno, nice to meet you. What do you do for work? Oh, how much money do you make doing that? You don't typically ask people what their salary is. And just the topic of money is quite taboo. So when we combine sexuality, especially women's sexuality, and money, women making money off their sexuality, that is seen as a really taboo thing. And so then intimacy provision, it's taboo. Which leads into a similar vibe, number 5. Some of my people who I know watch this may not like this one, but I'm going to say it anyways because that's what I do here. Number 5 is patriarchal control of women's bodies. Whether you want to believe it or not, we still live in a male-dominated society. So yes, women are doing better than ever. We can vote. We can work. We can do a lot of cool things that we couldn't do a while ago. But the fact is we still live in a sexist society where women are, you know, paid less than men, still do most of the housework and child rearing, have extremely higher rates of sexual violence. I could go on. Society is not equal yet. And a really big piece of this is that women's bodies are policed by the patriarchy. So being an intimacy provider really throws this on its head and makes the patriarchy like, whoa, what are they doing? Women are taking control of their bodies and using them how they want, not just their bodies, but their sexuality, and they're making money off it, and they have full control over what they're doing with their bodies and living their lives. And this control over our own bodies and our income, but especially our bodies and our sexuality, is a threat to patriarchal control. I know I have quite a few of my clients who watch these videos, and I really love that. Thank you for being here and supporting me. I'm not saying that you, as a man purchasing my services, are trying to control my body and my sexuality. It's a larger structure that's out there that doesn't want women to be in control of their bodies. And because of that, being an intimacy provider is really threatening to the current power dynamics in our society. Before you argue me, why do we judge intimacy providers so hard, but we don't judge clients? I'm not saying you should be judged. I don't think anybody should be judged. We should all do whatever we want to do as long as we're not hurting ourselves or anyone else. But when we talk about the intimacy industry, when we talk about intimacy providers, it's always, why is she doing that? What's wrong with her? Who hurt her? How misguided is she? We don't talk about why do men want to purchase these services, or why are they supporting this industry, or why do they need intimacy in their lives? Because let's be real, the patriarchy hurts everybody. Men are taught that they're not allowed to be emotional and connect with people and be intimate with people outside of sex, and therefore so many men that I interact with are seeing me not just because they want to, but because they want to connect and they want to feel heard and they want to be seen and they want to be held. And I think that because men are taught they have to be strong and emotionless and tough and all these things that the patriarchy says, then that hurts the men as well. So this is about why being an intimacy provider is taboo, and this point specifically about why the patriarchy is doing this to us. But at its core, it hurts everyone. So I'm not saying we should judge clients. I'm saying we should judge no one, including intimacy providers, and we should let women have full control of their bodies and their sexuality. And if they want to make money selling those things, that is up to us. And the last point I would like to speak to in terms of why being an intimacy provider is seen as so taboo in our culture is point number 6, classism and racism. There are a lot of people working in this industry who experience classism and racism, particularly people who are doing survival intimacy provision. YouTube safe words. Because of classism and racism, there are mixed with sexism. So a lot of women who experience classism and racism are struggling to find ways to financially support themselves, and therefore being an intimacy provider is an option that allows people to work and make a living. So people who experience stigma because of their class and race, and then also because of their work as an intimacy provider, are at much higher risk of experiencing taboo and internalized stigma and outright violence, whether that is verbal or physical. There's increased vulnerability, both socially and physically, and also within the criminal justice system. So people who are marginalized outside of the intimacy provider identity, when they have this taboo around being an intimacy provider combined with other identities, they are more likely to be targeted by law enforcement and less likely to be believed as adequate citizens or people deserving of safety in the eyes of the criminal justice system. So if it's already taboo, that's like kind of a weird word to describe people, but if you're already marginalized or oppressed because of identities that you hold, and then you work as an intimacy provider, which is another taboo identity to hold. There's just a compacted experience of marginalization and risks to one's safety. To me, I left this as the last point because I think it is one of the biggest. That yes, I feel my work is seen as taboo when I've applied for living places like the condo I live in now, or when I've tried to have relationships, even though I'm single as at this moment. There are definitely a lot of situations where I feel discrimination because of the work that I do, or I feel like I have to hide the work that I do, which is very uncomfortable. But the fact of the matter is, because I am a white and upper class intimacy provider, I have a lot more safety, both physically and socially, when I'm doing the work that I do. For providers who experience identities outside of being an intimacy provider that are also taboo in our culture or experience oppression, that just compounds on top of each other and makes for an experience that really I can't fully understand because of the identities that I have, but makes me know that we need our world to change. Often in my videos, I try to give some challenges of working in the industry and then some solutions of what we as providers can do to work through this, whether that's safety or internalized stigma or the places that you can work. This video is about the tabooness, I don't know if that's a word, but why being an intimacy provider is taboo. And to be honest, I don't really have any solutions for you. This is just, in my opinion, how it is right now. I think to make this better, we need a more equal society in which people of all genders, all classes, all races, all careers and ways of making money are treated respectfully and equally and just as valued as anybody else. So let's make that happen. If you have suggestions, feel free to leave them in the comments, because I would love a world where all of us are seen as just as important as the person beside us. Thank you for watching another one of my videos. I really greatly appreciate you being here. As always, if you have any feedback, that's what keeps me going. That's what keeps me making more videos. So if you like this video and you want to see more, please let me know. And if you have anything in particular you would like to learn about, I would be happy to try to make that happen. Whether you're new to the industry or still thinking about joining, I hope there were a couple useful nuggets in here for your journey.